a balance to the universe. The struggle to maintain that balance is the stuff of legends.
The new film from the director of Alien.
I've found my true mate.
You disgust me.
Starring Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. Legend. Rated PG.
Well, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. That was a quick little mini trailer there. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this movie.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Me and this movie have a past.
Good. Okay, I'm glad to. I'm excited to hear all about it. Everybody out there listening, my name is Pete,
And I'm Scott,
and these are the movies that made us gay. Yay. Well,
just us today.
yes,
no
indeed.
guests.
Again, just us
Talking
No.
about one of my favorite fantasy movies from the 1980s.
Yeah, you absolutely dig this movie.
You know how much I love this movie.
You've loved this movie for a long time. We watch it every year. We just bought a brand new, lovely physical version of this. Mm-hmm. What did we watch?
We watched Legend, directed by Ridley Scott, released December 13th, 1985 in the United Kingdom, and then April 18th, 1986 over here in the States. And I have to say that because
Love Legend.
There are two or maybe three versions of this movie. There's actually three. Mm-hmm. There's the international cut that was released in Europe. There is the United States cut,
Yeah.
obviously released here.
Yeah.
And then there is the director's cut.
Right.
So I kind of have to specify which cut released in what year.
Right. Well, I mean, much like I feel like a lot of 80s movies around this time kind of had that had this happen to them, but definitely Blade Runner is another one that
A lot
very
of Ridley
famously
Scott movies, there's
Yeah.
multiple cuts
They get
of a
chopped
lot
up
of his movies.
all over town. Yeah.
Most famously, Blade Runner, multiple cuts, and then
Yeah.
they finally settled on the final cut in 2007.
Yes, indeed.
Like Kingdom of Heaven has a longer cut that's supposed to be better. I have not watched it yet. I bought it, but I just haven't seen it. The Counselor that came out a few years ago in 2013. There is a director's cut of that movie. Gladiator has one. So Ridley Scott likes to go back and tinker with his movies.
Right. And non-Ridley Scott, but 80s epic, sci-fi fantasy movies.
Oh, yeah.
Dune famously has multiple cuts. There's a television version. There's an extended version, famously credited to director Alan Smithy after David Lynch took his name off of it. Alan Smithy's the fake director name that you can put on your movie.
I don't think
this.
Alan Smithy has been used in a movie for quite some time, probably since like 1999.
Right.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has definitely been a long time for that one. But I mean, it's there, and we found it the other day when we were looking at our Dune DVD, and I was like, oh my god, I can't even believe this. But yeah, I mean, this movie has many, many versions. We watched today the theatrical cut.
We have to do the theatrical one for the show because it is the one that I grew up on. It was the VHS tape that I had of this movie. Of course, it was the theatrical cut because you really couldn't see the director's cut or anything remotely resembling the international one until the DVD release summer of 2002.
Well, also, the theatrical release has the Tangerine Dream score.
Yes.
That's another way you can tell which version that you're watching. If it's this, spacey, new age, Enya-esque
I think the
score.
Tangerine Dream score is so fucking cool.
It is cool. It's very cool. I do feel like I'm in a spa and I'm about to get a nice rub down when I'm listening to it.
I have it in my iTunes and I listen to it a lot.
Yeah, it is kind of that quintessential 80s synth score that so many Netflix series and thriller movies, currently are trying
Especially
to emulate.
for this time.
Those movies that are trying to rip off that 80s synth score. It's this,
Yeah.
when you listen to it, it's like woodwind instruments that are completely digital.
And you were saying that this is all done on a keyboard.
Well, it's a synthesizer.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you really want to get into what an 80s synthesizer is, remember Ferris Bueller? When he was making the throw up vomit sound.
Oh, sure.
It's a
yeah.
keyboard, And what they do is, they program in these sounds that they create or that they sample. They'll sample a flute sound and they'll put it in there and they'll digitize it. Or, I am not a musician. I'm not a digital,
Well, it's
artist.
cool that on our Arrow Factory Blu-ray that we just got, that I think that they're a band from Canada called The College, and they do synth scores, and they did the big song that was used in the movie Drive, and they have a little bit talking about how cool the score is and how it like really furthered like that little niche of music in the 80s.
Well, the cool thing about Tangerine Dream theatrical scores is that they are digital, they are synthesized, but they don't feel like, and Scott, you know what I'm talking about. Listeners, sorry, but The Princess Bride.
Oh, that score is garbage, mama. Like, it doesn't ruin the movie at all just because The Princess Bride is great, but I really hate that score.
But it's a digital score, and it sounds like it's made on like a Dell computer. Mm-hmm. Or like, what were those computers that you could only buy on like over the phone, and they would get delivered, and the box was a cow print.
Oh my
Listeners,
God! Was it a Gateway?
Gateway,
yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah, Gateway. It sounds like it was made on a Gateway computer,
a computer that I have not
Windows
thought of in
95.
years.
You know, the score for The Princess Bride is not great. It's digital, and it sounds digital.
Yeah, and it makes it sound super dated.
But the thing is, the instruments that they are trying to emulate are these brass instruments, horns, things like that, to give it this medieval times kind of a feel, to get these like horned instruments and trumpets and things like that, to give it that like princessy sword and sorcery, not even sword and sorcery, like medieval times feel.
Yeah.
This movie, they're not going for that feel with this score. They are going for a dreamy, kind of
very ethereal,
new age, ethereal, Enya-esque. I get a lot of, and this is going to be completely out of the blue, but I get a lot of L.A. Story in that score, but L.A. Story heavily uses Enya in their score.
And I believe that when this movie didn't test well, we can get into it more when we talk about just the various cuts of this movie and the troubled productions, that they kind of wanted a younger audience, the MTV generation.
Right.
And Tangerine Dream had just done the score for Risky Business.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, speaking of Risky Business...
Tom. Our Tommy. I have mixed feelings about Tom Cruise, but this is like my favorite era of Tom Cruise.
I mean, can we just say right off the bat, this is pre-Scientology Tom Cruise?
Yes.
So
it was pre-marriage to Mimi Rogers.
Yep. Which she sucked him in. Mm-hmm. Damn that.
And also Mimi Rogers, I don't think was a Scientologist for very long after. I think
she leave right afterwards?
I think she pieced out pretty quick.
She gave them their Messiah.
Yeah, she gave them their Messiah and was like, deuces.
Kick rocks, suckers. Well, I mean, they got him, but not yet at this point. This is...
Maybe 21 years old when he made this movie.
This movie is released in 1985, and Rosie's Tommy, I mean, he just looks like a fresh spring chicken. Mm-hmm. I always thought, to me, like growing up, for me, this movie seemed older even than Risky Business.
I could see that. Yep.
Excuse me. Like when I would watch this movie and see Tom Cruise, I would think, well, this has to be his first thing. Yeah. This to me looks like it's 1982, but I mean, it was released in 85.
All the right moves in Risky Business were probably like 83 and 84, I think.
Yeah. In 1985, Tom Cruise would have been 23. He was born in July of 62.
What year did The Outsiders come out?
So when they were making this movie, he was probably about 22, which is very, very young.
He looks like a baby when you watch it, too.
He looks like a child. The Outsiders was released. I mean, Taps was 81. Outsiders was 83.
Sure.
Losing It, 82. The Risky Business and Outsiders are both 83. And he looks very young in The Outsiders as well. But I mean, and then All the Right Moves was also 83. He had 3 big movies in 83. But in this movie, he is running around in this tattered T-shirt and no pants.
No pants.
The entire time. And, I mean...
Looks like a gay 22-year-old going out in West Hollywood, going as a knight, and just feels like he has to slut it up a little bit by not wearing pants.
I'm just going to wear this little panty, a little green panty, and like a tunic that's kind of tore up. And
looks great doing it, too.
Shit. Well, first of all, it's his old teeth.
Yeah.
Which I love.
You get those old chompers before they capped him.
He's got like these Count Dracula, like, fangs going on.
But I
very
kind
pointy.
of
love
like
it.
that he does look a little less perfect in this movie, which makes him a little more relatable.
Absolutely. Especially because the next thing is Top Gun, and in Top Gun he just looks like he's molded out
I
of cream
don't remember
cheese.
what the teeth situation is in Top Gun,
I
but
think
I'm
he got 'em
assuming
fixed
that
by
he
then.
got him fixed right before.
Yeah, I think he did. Because I mean, Top Gun is just like he is just the idea of this, like, you know, all American
Matinee Idol.
Right, yeah,
and also
absolutely.
directed by Ridley Scott's brother. So he sent
Tony.
Tom Tony's way.
R.I.P. Tony Scott. Yeah, very interesting. But I mean, we're going to talk a lot about Tom Cruise in this movie, this costume, this performance. But I have to say, he is pantsless the entire time. As you
Great
know,
leg muscles too.
that's what I'm going for right here. You
He's
know,
definitely been doing those calves.
well, the thing is,
Exercises.
His co-stars in this movie, besides Sara, who is gone for most of the movie, his co-stars are little people or a very tiny little boy. So he is down on his haunches the whole time.
And Tom Cruise is not a tall man.
No, he's not. But he is down on his haunches the whole time, so he can match their eye level and be all in the same shot together. And so he's down, crouched down, like I said, on his haunches, and you just see, you know, these like crazy leg muscles. You see a couple of upskirt shots just because of the way he's positioned. So I mean, wandering eyes, I got to tell you.
They definitely.
It's our Tommy.
They definitely did have some like dance bloomers on.
Yes, not quite a dance belt, but just a little, you know, just a little panty, a little, you know, a little brief.
They call them bloomers in like the cheer world.
Yeah, a little brief. And he is his character is Jack. Just the first of how many times has Tom Cruise played a character named Jack? Countless. Countless. But this is the first Jack that Tom Cruise has played, I believe. I'll have to go back and look at those other ones. But his character is Jack, and he is this green man of the forest.
Green man of the forest. I know that sort of in the script development, there was talk that they were just going to make him green. And then probably the makeup guy was like, I don't know if that is going to work out all that well.
Right. Green Man of the Forest is like a literary trope.
I'm sure it's from like Norwegian folklore or somewhere in Europe.
Yeah, you know,
this man that lives in the forest and sort of looks after all of the creatures.
Yes. And the interesting thing is that, you know, Jack, this character, this Green Man of the Forest, you would think he has a little bit in common with like Puck, but then we also have the Gump character, who we'll get to in a minute. But I want to keep talking about Tommy for a second. You know, he's described at the beginning as, he lives by himself and he just interacts with the animals of the woods.
He has sort of an on and off thing with this Princess Lily.
Yes. Who,
his side piece.
depending on what version you're watching.
Oh, she's not always referred to as a princess.
They didn't call her a princess in this one.
Yep.
Only in the director's cut, I think, is when her like milkmaid calls her Princess Lily. And this one she just calls her Lady Lily. Sara. Sloane Peterson.
I mean, I'm assuming that she would have. I'm assuming that she would have had to make this right before Ferris Bueller.
Probably back to back. Yes. I believe what the math says that Sara was about 16 when she made this movie.
Whew.
Yes.
Young.
Crazy. Very,
and
very
probably
young.
they could just work her for 10 hours in the UK.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how their like laws worked at the time or over there, but yeah, very, very young when she made this. Very beautiful. Sloane Peterson, later of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which we love. Her acting in this movie, well, I mean, all the acting is very heightened, very stylized. This movie is very stylized.
Okay, so I was going to say at the top of the show that this is one of those movies that I loved when I was a kid, that I sort of have these blinders about stuff like the story.
Right.
The acting style.
Right.
That I've seen this movie since I was like 9 years old. And it's everything that I just take for granted that when you go into this movie blind, it is bananas.
It's wild. The story is like super simple.
So paper thin. I mean,
So
it's a classic.
simple.
It's a classic fairy tale.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault that it is so transparent when you look at it as a story.
Yeah, it is very episodic. I didn't think about that until we were watching, you know.
Well, it makes
this great
sense that
Arrow video.
when you look at sort of the development of this movie with the screenwriter.
Yeah.
That probably his first pass at this script was like Lord of the Rings epic.
Yeah.
And they just had to scale that shit down.
Yeah,
That
and I'm sure
this is
Ridley
what we can
Scott-
afford.
Yeah.
We can't have an army of goblins. We'll
have 3.
We can do about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And same thing with like the crew with Gump that we can do a few gnomes. We can't do a lot.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
do 2 really well.
Yes. I mean, talk about budget. These forests.
It's a movie that leads with its art direction, which I love.
Insane. This is a movie where you can really tell, oh, yeah, Ridley Scott came from commercials. And not just commercials, 80s commercials, where they were like, oh, we're going to give you a Coke commercial.
Production
but it is going
value.
to look like a goddamn movie.
Production value,
Yeah,
honey.
Yes, bitch. These shots in this forest
Oh,
are
insane.
absolutely insane. It's hard to believe that it's all indoors, but then at the same time, when you find that out and you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, I don't really see the sky. And
But
when I do, it's purple.
But it doesn't come off as something that feels too set bound.
Right,
to
right,
it's
right.
very successful.
well, there's like a bear in like the first shot.
Yeah.
There is a bear batting a beehive
Love it.
off of a branch.
Just these
of a
very
tree.
these very just picturesque fairy tale images that Ridley Scott was trying to hone in.
Yes, absolutely. Super duper fairy tale. And you know, when you see Tom Cruise in this costume, in this like tattered rags, he is giving you
Jolly Green Giant Twink.
He's giving you Jolly Green Giant Twink for sure. He's giving me Peter Pan,
Yes.
obviously. You know, Jolly Green Giant Twink, yes. Just like, yeah, a little forest woodland guy.
His hair is amazing. Whenever I grow up my hair and it gets to be almost shoulder length,
Yeah.
I get the Jack mullet from Legend.
Well, that's the thing.
When you
That's
look at the back
supposed
of
to-
it,
that's his
Yeah.
hair.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the ponytail was
I think
added
they
in
gave
there.
him some extensions in the back, but
Yeah.
that's his hair, though. Yeah,
Because his hair in this movie, if you've not seen this movie, if you're not familiar with this movie, you have no reference and don't have a phone because you live in Siberia. Imagine like the length of like mid 90s like James E. Ha from Smashing Pumpkins. Imagine like Ozzy for when he was in Black Sabbath. Like that kind of like
and you've told me that I look like James from Smashing Pumpkins when I grow up my hair too.
your hair.
Yeah.
It's just that like straight. It's like when a guy who has straight hair grows it out and doesn't cut it at all. It's just that really cool.
The weird layers.
Layers. But then in the back, there's just a weird little ponytail coming out of the back. So it's very interesting on Tommy. But and then Sara is in a very classic princess
fairy princess Halloween
gown.
costume.
Yes.
Actually,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say Halloween costume.
No,
It doesn't look cheap at all.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Nothing in this
It's
movie looks cheap.
Right. But then, so you see these beautiful visuals, this amazing forest that they built from the ground up. I mean, when you look at this and you look at Fangorn Forest in Lord of the Rings, you're like, okay, Lord of the Rings, that's a set. This is like amazing. It's complete. It's night and day. And Lord of the Rings, Fangorn Forest, that was a amazing feat of movie making.
Yeah.
Right. But it just, I don't know, something about the scale in this movie. I just think that they, they famously
it's those
use
giant trees that do it
yes,
in those shots.
and they famously used the biggest sound stages in England.
It was the 007 stage
007
that they had the
stage.
big submarine
Yeah.
set on
Is
from
it
one
at
of the Bond movies.
Shepperton Studios, or is it at the other one?
I think it's a Pinewood.
It's a Pinewood. You know, the biggest stages in England, the James Bond, the 007 stage. So they were able to make this huge scale, right? So these trees are epic. There's like a full waterfall, all this crazy
They had to
crap.
go from like summer to winter
yes.
with all of the fake snow.
Yes, as part of this part of the story. But then, you get this super heightened, almost fairy tale theater acting
Yeah.
out of not just the two. Well, here's the other thing. Like you said, not a lot of characters in this movie. And aside from Jack and Lily, there's only one other human character that speaks.
Are you talking about Gump?
No, I'm talking about the milkmaid.
Oh, the milkmaid.
Like
sure.
a human
sure.
lady. Yeah. Everybody else is like,
Because Gump is like
woodland creatures.
a woodland sprite.
Yes, Gump is Puck.
Puck.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I guess the sprite is Una.
Yeah, fairy, sprite, pixie.
Yep.
Yeah. Gump is like a Puck kind of, Midsummer Night's Dream character. He describes himself, and it's very much like, it's almost like Jack. Like, I live in the woods. I'm a, but yeah, the only other human whimsy character is this milkmaid. I forget her name.
Her relationship with Lily is very interesting. That she
Weird.
just goes and visits this woman in the forest, this peasant coming from the palace.
But right off the bat, Lily's just like, she's fucking up her laundry. She's talking shit to her. And all this,
eating her cookies inside.
Cookies, and the woman's just like, I think of you like a daughter. I'm like, your fucking brat daughter. Jeez. Lily's just, but in this sense, it would make more sense that Lily is a princess because she's just helping herself to everything.
And she's just sort of, she likes to go see how the other half lives.
Yeah. But but again, this woman who plays, the milkmaid or whatever that lives in this like hovel.
It's a very cute, like, storybook cottage.
Oh, it is. I would love to live there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably a hovel to Lily.
Yes, absolutely. It almost sounds like her voice is. Well, I think all the dialogue is.
Well,
looped.
everything is looped
I think all the
because
dialogue is looped,
shooting in that gigantic soundstage, there was probably fans blowing.
Well-
You probably got bad audio, so they did have to loop everything.
Well, the reason that there's fans blowing is because in every shot, there's like
there's shit in the air
there's
everywhere.
pollen and dander and what are the little flowers that you blow on? Dandelion, seeds. It's crazy.
Asthmatic's worst nightmare.
My goodness! My eyes are watering.
Just working crew for that movie. If you have asthma, must have been awful.
Yeah, and the thing is, it looks absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it reads really well on film.
Del Toro talks about it, in the commentary for Pan's Labyrinth, that he just wanted this pollen in the air, and it just gives it this magical, otherworldly feeling.
I could see this movie being a big inspiration for Del Toro when he was making something like Pan's Labyrinth too.
Absolutely. So all that pollen's there, and then not only is there pollen everywhere, and like dander, there's glitter flying around.
The glitter budget on this movie must have been like
actual
hundreds
glitter.
of thousands of dollars. If you think like Edward Cullen,
oh my god,
looks crazy with glitter, just any shot of Mia, Sara, and Tom Cruise in this movie.
There are shots of them when the light hits their skin, and they are like Tom Cruise is probably still finding glitter,
just
in his crack,
in his
to
ass crack.
this day.
I mean, just throw some more glitter on it.
Yeah, throw some glitter on it, honey. Like, yeah, it's amazing. The glitter budget, like you said, must have been through the roof. But yeah, so the acting is super super duper heightened. But I mean, it's an 80s
fairy tale, and also I kind of wanted to discuss that a little bit before we move on more with the story.
I mean, 1985 is
80s
fairy tale movie.
Fairy tales and fantasy movies just had this boom in the 1980s.
Yes.
What do we get? We get stuff like Crawl, The Never-Ending Story.
Yeah.
I mean, Dune really isn't a fairy tale, but it's a high fantasy movie.
Afterwards we were getting Willow, Dragon Slayer,
Excalibur, Dark Crystal,
absolutely.
Return to Oz, Labyrinth.
Even things like Beastmaster,
Dragon Slayer,
Lady Hawk. All these movies.
Also, like Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This movie has as much in common with Conan the Barbarian as it does with Labyrinth. Mm-hmm. It's everything.
So
the swords,
sort of the reason of that wave of fantasy movies. I mean, it all just has to trace back to Star Wars, right?
Probably. Probably, yeah. I would say so. Yeah, because Star Wars was so much more than a sci-fi movie, And
definitely when you watch something like Crawl, you can see the Star Wars inspirations in it.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, this a lot too with Excalibur. But yeah, definitely Star Wars, I think, opened the door for, because like you said, the studio was like, we want the kids to come to this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what...
Because this movie is not a traditional children's movie at all.
No. But I think, too, like in the 80s, it was a little different, you know? Like,
you could make movies for different ages and sell them to kind of everyone, almost.
And I think kids would go to movies like this and movies like what the hell am I, 7 years old, watching Lady Hawk and loving it?
Yeah.
But we did.
Oh, you know, speaking of the Princess Bride score, Lady Hawk is one of them that has a synth score.
That MIDI score,
and I think it almost ruins the movie.
Yeah, totally.
When you revisit it now.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like things like that. It's like, why were we interested in movies like that I don't know, seem to me now, I'm like, oh, is this a little boring? I don't know.
Or it's like, I was just rewatching a lot of The Dark Crystal when I was a kid. There is not one human in Dark Crystal, which is a big turnoff for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That there are no actors in this movie. Yeah. But I mean, 9-year-old me would just watch that movie on repeat.
It's puppets. Everybody
taped
loves
off cables.
puppets.
Everybody loves puppets. And like The Dark Crystal sort of has the subgenre of like Jim Henson puppet work too.
Yeah.
That sort of works on this whole nother level.
Yeah, yeah. It's very interesting. I feel like movies out of
what a moment.
Movies out of the UK were definitely a little more, not adult and by any means, but a little less kiddie. Like movies out of the US, there were definitely kid elements that were there for us to latch onto.
But like
musicals,
kind of a
songs.
movie like Dragon Slayer, if it were a complete US production, would definitely be a little more family friendly.
Yes.
Than
Excalibur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excalibur, kind of John Borman, when he made that movie, who did Deliverance, wanted to make a Lord of the Rings movie. It fell through, so he just sort of had to settle with King Arthur.
Yeah.
And also, Excalibur and Legend share the same cinematographer, too.
Okay. All right.
Found that out today.
Yeah. But I mean, I definitely think... I don't know that this movie right now, if kids would be super... Well, yeah, maybe. I think I would recommend this to kids. It's not like sexy or
not at all.
It's not any more violent than, it is less violent than Lord of the Rings for sure.
Definitely less violent than like a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I think as far as scares wise, I think it's right up there with an Avengers as far as like scary monsters. So, but I don't feel like it would be marketed to... I don't know how this movie would be received today.
Well, I mean, even at the time, this movie was not very liked.
Yeah, true.
And I think that Universal, who had the distributing rights in America, had a real hard time selling it. And that's why we got the under 90-minute Tangerine Dream cut of this movie.
Right.
That they sort of had to skim off the top of all of the scenes of the movie to just get a under 90-minute movie.
So the version that we just watched, the theatrical cut, was under 90 minutes?
I think it's under 90 minutes.
It did seem really fast.
Yep.
It was very brisk.
And when
we were watching it, and I was like, we're already here?
And when you watch I was watching a little bit of the director's cut today.
Yeah.
There's no major changes of it, but just scenes are longer.
Sure.
That they cut some of the dialogue.
Yeah.
The editing, I think that the director's cut probably breathes a little better.
Right.
I think that when Ridley Scott first turned in the first cut of this movie, it was over 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
That I would have liked to have seen this movie released kind of not all cut up, because I think that it would have been a little more embraced, at least with critics at the time.
Story-wise, might have been a little bit more coherent. I mean, not that it's incoherent.
It's a pretty simple story.
It's a very simple story. You know what I have to say about Ridley Scott movies? Growing up, to me, being kind of like a big movie watcher even as a kid.
And he makes like movies with a capital M.
Well, that's what I was going to say. To me, as a kid, I knew that Ridley Scott made Alien, right? The first one. And to me, that was a cool sci-fi movie, but to me, it was so much more heightened than, even something like Star Wars, because I was like, this is a serious sci-fi movie for like grown-ups, right?
Scary.
Yes. And then, hearing that he made this movie and then seeing it, I'm like, well, it's a fantasy movie with like unicorns and princesses and fairies, but it's a Ridley Scott fantasy movie. So it is going to be quiet and not a lot of dialogue and long takes. So I kind of expected for it to be this kind of like almost like a grown-up kind of a feel to it, just because that was the idea in my head of Ridley Scott as a director, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of delivers on that, but I do think it is very accessible, and especially if you do go out and just watch the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
I feel like just watching it tonight, it was super brisk. It went by really quick.
It works.
Yeah.
It's the movie that I fell in love with as a kid. You know, I
Yeah.
have an interesting story of when I first watched this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever told you that I was probably in the second grade at the time. And I remember this was summer of 93. And I remember me and a girl, it was Yana Robertson. Kind of childhood friends of mine. I was friends with
What
her
up,
whole
Yana?
family. And we went to go see Jurassic Park. We were just dropped off there, and that's
You were
another,
dropped off at the
I mean,
movie?
that's another thing of just like dropping off
In the
small
90s?
children at the movies without an adult,
Yeah.
just to go see Jurassic Park. And I remember seeing Jurassic Park. I mean, huge game changer in just
Absolutely.
movies when you're
Yeah.
a kid that you had never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And I remember getting back to her house. And my sister was there, and they were watching a movie, and it was Legend.
Okay.
And we walked in right when I think that Tom Cruise shot the chain with the unicorn, and the unicorn was loose. And
Oh,
you get
that's like the
and
end.
you get the big showdown
Yeah.
with Tim Curry and Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And me just being, what the hell is this? This is amazing.
Yeah.
What is this movie?
Yeah.
And then it ends. And I just don't really have... I mean, I can't, like, track this movie down of,
Yeah.
like, what were you just watching?
Yeah.
Like, how can I get a hold of it? And I think it took me until Yahoo Movies... I would go onto Yahoo
Sure,
Movies when
yeah.
I was a kid
Yeah.
and just look up the filmography of Tom Cruise.
Okay.
And I just found it.
Yeah.
That it's Legend. And then I think that I found the tape at my uncle's house, and I'm like, that's the movie that I saw when...
Yeah.
I got home from Jurassic Park, and I took the tape
When
and
you
just
were
would
8.
watch it on repeat.
Yeah.
And then when I was in high school, the director's cut came out.
Yeah.
Or like the director's cut, the first DVD release came out. Mind blown.
Yeah.
That there is a whole nother cut of this movie.
With different music?
With different music.
That's wild. That's something that, director's cuts come and go. Movies have extended edition, unrated cuts.
and usually it's like 2 minutes or something.
Exactly,
This movie
yeah.
adds on almost 20 goddamn minutes of the movie.
and to have a completely new orchestral score.
And I was
It's
so
like,
familiar
it's a whole other
with
movie.
my tape
Yeah.
that I'm just like, oh, that's not in the original one. That's not there. Just so I was so familiar with the dialogue, and I also noticed that it's a different dub.
Oh,
There's
sure.
different dubs
Like
of
takes.
actors and takes.
different takes of their readings. Yeah, you know what? Do you know what I do that with a lot of the time? I do
Movie
that-
trailers?
No. I do that when we're going to bed and we put on The Simpsons and we watch it on Disney Plus, and I'll say that was cut from syndication.
Yeah.
that joke was cut from syndication because I'm so
Because you're
used
that
to
used to the television airings of The Simpsons.
because I would tape them, and I had like 10 VHS tapes full of The Simpsons.
So speaking of like movies that were shown on television, that
Yeah.
I don't think that I caught this a lot on
I don't think I ever saw
cable
this
at
on
all when I was a
television,
kid,
yeah.
but there's a little bonus feature of an alternate opening with an actor reading the insane
well, there's
text.
a really long opening crawl.
There is a really long opening crawl that is insane.
I mean,
when you
it's like
break
Blade,
it down.
It's like Blade Runner.
Yep.
It's like Blade Runner.
And
you're
clocked-
thrown into these movies that you're just like, what the shit is going on?
And that's definitely like a post-production studio tinkering
Yes,
of that.
absolutely.
Audiences aren't going to understand this.
Yeah.
We have to put a text crawl at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And we totally clocked James Remar is reading the opening text, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
randomly. I was just like, is that Remar? And you're like, I think
I
it is.
think that's Remar.
Yeah,
I think
but I
that's,
mean,
that's Richard from Sex and the City.
he would have been working. Well, he wouldn't have been working with Ridley Scott. It would have been Cameron. I was thinking of the Aliens connection.
Yeah.
Like he would have been making Aliens,
Almost in Aliens, and then got let go.
Yeah. So very interesting, the kind of tie-in there. But
And that movie, all of the bonus features and documentaries, that it really just opened my eyes
Oh, yeah.
about how much work was put into this movie.
Yeah.
I found out about the 007 stage burning down
Yes.
at the end of production. That I think it's the scenes where there's a little like forest fire and they're all dancing around it.
Sure.
And just embers were collecting
Yeah.
in the rafters.
Just getting hot,
and
hotter
just getting
hotter,
really
yeah.
hot, and
Yeah.
it just caught on fire one day.
Well, they also tell stories about this forest set being so big and vast that birds and
mice and rabbits would just live in it.
Yeah, they would just because these sound stages have these huge airplane hangar doors to open up to allow things to get in and out. So when they would open up these doors,
you created this wonderful environment for us. Thanks so much. Yeah. And now you're burning it down.
Yeah. So maybe that giant beehive that bear was fighting with was real. Who knows?
A bear that just wandered in.
Yeah.
Into Pinewood.
So you want to talk about the production value of this movie? We need to talk about Tim Curry.
Oh my God. I mean, one of the most iconic movie makeups ever. The character design in this movie, and that's the thing, is that this character design is so ingrained in pop culture that
people don't even know what
young
it's from.
people just know this image, and they don't even necessarily know what it's
you
from.
Just think it's a stock footage
devil.
Mm-hmm. You think it's Alamy photos.
It kind of bothers me when people describe darkness as the devil in this movie.
Yes.
I want to correct them that he is darkness.
Yeah, he's the Lord of Darkness.
He is the Lord of Darkness. Yep.
But he's not the devil. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it has become so ingrained as just this image. What was like an insurance commercial? What was that commercial? Where they got somebody in the suit, and we're like, "What the shit is this?"
It's like a Match.com commercial, right? It's like a Match.com commercial.
Yeah, we'll find some images of that.
And the makeup is done by Rob Boyton, and he did The Thing.
Okay.
Yep, I think he was just coming off The Thing.
The makeup in The Thing is wild.
Like just a household name if you're into movie makeup.
Yeah, yeah. So Tim Curry as the Lord of Darkness is very much like this Chernabog from Fantasia character. He's completely red.
It is very, and it's a little like Night on Bell Mountain.
Yes,
too.
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely like Night on Bell Mountain. He's red. These horns. It's like a long. What are they called? Longhorn. Those steer.
Yeah, it's like a steer.
It's like a longhorn steer, and they're pointed completely forward. It's like. I mean,
it definitely runs with that imagery of a devil or Satan being half like
his
animal.
His ears are like,
I love his little ears.
They're like cow ears.
His little cow ears I think are really cute.
They're like goat cow. They're huge. They're not just like a little fairy little Mr. Spock ear. No, mama, it's like a full on. This man is like a bovine. Like he went to Bovine University. He is like a full on. This is a biblical demon.
Yeah,
right?
He's coming to you in your nightmares.
Yeah. He's got hooves, the cloven hooves, and Tim Curry is wearing this like foot apparatus. And it's not just like the Lady Gaga Mother Monster, I'm going to wear the high heel that makes me walk like a horse. No.
They're little hooves.
It's like bigger
are
than
big
that.
hooves.
They're huge hooves.
And they said
they said
like in the documentary that I guess that Tim Curry really thought the hooves were comfortable. Like they were easy to walk in just because they built them like a high heel.
Yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't quite walking around on stilts. Yeah. Like he could easily maneuver around in them.
Yes. Probably very close to what was built for the Fawn in Pan's Labyrinth, but even that used blue screen to kind of cover up.
It was kind of arching. It was kind of arching like Doug's calf.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just horns. It's not just ears and
it's
a face.
His chest piece.
It's his entire.
And that's the thing is that it's this frightening image, but it's also kind of sexy.
I mean, it's
kind of hot.
Why isn't he wearing a harness? He needs to be wearing a harness. He is a muscle queen, Jim Bunny. Lord of Darkness.
He's at like harness night at the Eagle.
Yeah,
he's ready to. He's ready to party.
Poppers in his pocket. I mean, this costume, this creature is like absolutely insane. It's nuts, and you've never before or since, I don't think, has there been like a full. I mean, this makes Hellboy look like a kid. This makes Hellboy look like nothing. It's like
grade school.
Yeah. It's
compared to Legend.
Yeah, it's completely.
And I'm sure that's one of those things that they were going for when they were doing makeup for Hellboy.
Absolutely,
is that we want to make movie makeup look this elevated and iconic.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you watch it now, you're just thinking, well, now those horns he wouldn't really be wearing those horns they would just be like little nubbins, and they would extend them digitally.
And I think that's probably what they did for the newer Hellboy that came out.
Yeah, well, Hellboy's horns are always filed down.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There are some scenes where he has long ones, and those are absolutely 100% digital.
And they said that the horns were very light.
Well, they had to be very lightweight
kind of
they
these
pointed,
lightweight casts.
They didn't point up. They're not like little Jason Sudeikis devil horns, like on a headband. They're like full on, like bull, like Ferdinand the Bull horns that are like 2 feet going perpendicular to his body. So if they were anything other than hollow, he would completely fall forward on his face because there's so just the angle and all that. I think he still did get some like back and neck issues, not permanent, but I mean he still had some pain from from wearing them. But they did make them out to be very, very.
And he was
light.
wearing like a bike helmet too that would just sort of
the headpiece is so big.
The headpiece is so built that it was like built into a helmet on his head.
Yeah.
And I think that the makeup, they said at the beginning when they were shooting, it would take about 8 hours.
Oh my God.
They couldn't even shoot a lot with them, too.
Before he even gets to set to shoot.
In the middle of the night, probably.
8 hours of makeup.
Probably call time was like 2:30 in the morning.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Sit in the makeup chair for 8 hours, and if you're lucky, get 3 hours of filming.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing is that he's not in a lot of this movie.
No, he's not.
He's introduced. I mean, you see the opening shots of him. And then you don't really get a major scene with him until Lily meets him, and it's maybe an hour into the movie.
Yes.
And I think it's because the makeup was that difficult that they just couldn't film a lot with him.
Well, in the first scenes that we do see of him, he's sitting down.
Yeah,
he's in a chair and he's like resting. It was his back up to the.
I love his Dayglow claws.
Well, what's really cool
his
about
Dayglow
those
claws?
Scenes, yeah,
I think we have a clip of that scene too.
Okay, let's see.
Must be dread indeed to trouble you, Lordship.
Looking upon these frail creatures, one would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them.
What do they look like, Lord?
Let this serve to remind you. The creature is crowned with a single spiral reaching like an antenna straight to heaven.
I get the point, Lord.
So he's wearing a full set of teeth underneath all this makeup. So it's probably better that they went in and I'm sure he just re-recorded all the dialogue and then they pitched it down.
Yeah.
But you still get that Tim Curry voice. You still can tell it's him.
That voice is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. So good.
It's insane that, I mean, we were just watching Clue the other night.
Yeah.
He made this and Clue the same year.
Yeah. They were both released in 85.
That is range. I think both released in December of 85.
Yeah.
So quite literally shot back to back.
Yeah.
Like, that is some range.
Absolutely. Iconic.
I mean, just like Tim Curry, this unusual gay icon that I don't think it's ever been confirmed of Tim Curry's sexuality. Yeah. It really doesn't matter, but he just has this very unique place in gay film history with like Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
And Ridley Scott said that when they were casting Darkness that he was thinking of Rocky Horror and that we really need someone that can go there in this performance and is completely fearless.
Yeah.
And he said he immediately thought of Frankenfurter.
Yeah. What I love about Tim Curry is that he just has this like power in his voice.
Yeah.
Like you can tell that if you were ever to be in a room with him or see a performance, that it would just be like loud. Just because he's got that crazy
He's delivering
voice.
for the back row.
I used to love the Fox Kids Peter Pan animated series.
Is he Captain Hook?
And he's Captain Hook. Yeah. And he was amazing in that. He
Yeah.
was so good. And that was James Marsden, Thackeray Binks as Peter Pan.
Yeah.
That was on Fox Kids in the afternoons in the 90s. I loved that. That was so good. And I mean, all of his performances are iconic. And
nobody did the 1980s like him.
yeah, and just the thing about this movie is just like not only is his performance acting wise amazing, but he's doing it
All in this makeup.
underneath pounds of, makeup. It's crazy. And it's like, wow. You never see anything like that anymore.
And you never see...
This would be completely motion captured
Yeah,
today.
this would be completely motion captured now. And I know that when like Jim Carrey was making The Grinch, you saw a lot of interviews with Jim Carrey saying how much work that makeup was and how it was too much at times.
Yeah.
And I haven't really ever read anything with Tim Curry complaining about the makeup.
Yeah.
That he just knew it was a part of the process.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it was hell. I'm sure it was awful. There are some stories in, the trivia and on this about him
Tearing off his skin.
trouble taking the makeup off. It is a very long process
I think
to get
that
it off.
they had to put him in a bath to get it off of
to
him.
dissolve the spirit gum to loosen
And I
the
think that
appliances from his skin.
They tore some of his skin, and the doctor recommended that your skin needs to breathe a little bit, so you cannot film for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. It was that the old Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Your skin needs oxygen.
You're like suffocating with all of this makeup.
That shit is not a lie in Goldfinger.
Yeah.
You do need oxygen in your skin to breathe, or else you will have trouble.
Speaking of movie makeup, we have to give a shout out to Blix. Blix is played by Alice Playton, and you might remember Alice Playton's voice. She is the voice of BB Bluff from Doug.
How about that?
Yep.
BB Bluff. Mm-hmm. Which character is she? BB. She's
BB is like the rich bitch friend, and her dad pretty much owns Bluffington.
Okay, so here's my thing with Blix. Blix is the head goblin. Mm-hmm. Darkness is
henchman,
like number one.
Does
henchman,
all the bidding for him.
All the bidding for him.
He asks him to cut the unicorn horn off in that clip that we just listened to.
Yes. And I've read, I don't know how true it is, I've read that Blix's face in character design was kind of modeled off of Keith Richards.
They mention it in the documentary that was a main reference.
Okay, so that's probably true. Here's my other thing. I did not realize that Blix was played and voiced by a woman. Mm-hmm. Is Blix a lady goblin?
She could be. Maybe she's gender neutral.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, she's a goblin. Are goblins even born of? Do they have biological genders?
Fluid.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I think goblins are just
pansexual.
I think goblins are just sexless little creatures that
kind of like Lord of the Rings. Like they're created.
They spring forth from a hole in the ground. That darkness is just like I need minions.
I almost kind of think that it's a character that works better performed by a woman too. Mm-hmm, and that's probably what they thought because they needed somebody small. Yeah. So they just cast this like under 5 foot character actress.
Yeah. Very good voice. And the interesting thing too is that the voice is completely modulated. It's pitched.
Sounds cool.
Almost pitched higher.
Yeah.
It's very interesting what they did. And so they didn't even really need it to be the person that acted the role. It could have just been, they could have just found a voice. But I mean, they did use her.
She has this incredible voice, and she ended up doing the ADR work for David Bennett, who is the actor who played Gump.
Yes.
David Bennett was a very small... he wasn't a child. He was over 18.
He was 19.
He was a young man at the time.
But he looks about
he looked
8
like a
or
child.
9. Yeah.
He was in a big movie in Germany a little bit before this called The Tin Drum. Did you know that?
I did, yes.
And
I'm familiar with the Tin Drum.
I've never seen it.
Controversy.
Yeah.
Controversy with the Tin Drum because he, again, looked about 8 or 9 years old but was grown. Mm-hmm. But he just, his body physically was, kind of
and he didn't even have like a Gary Coleman disease that he just looked...
Well, I don't think Gary Coleman really has anything. I think he just...
Oh, sure.
I think Gary Coleman had kidney trouble.
Okay, sure.
And it just kind of contributed to
like
him,
over health reasons. And I don't even think David Bennett even had health reasons. He grew up to be a very average-looking adult, so he didn't always he did grow up.
Yes,
he's
still short.
Older.
He's still short. Mm-hmm. He's still a shorter in stature adult man. But he did continue growing. At this point in his life, at 19 years old, he was still like 4'8", and they just thought, well, he's just going to perpetually look like a child for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. But eventually, later on, he did continue to grow and age into and mature. And as an adult man now, he looks mature. And he did grow in height, but still, I think he's only like 5'1" or 5'2".
I think he ended up joining a really successful theater company
Yes.
in Europe too. And David Bennett is from Austria and has a very thick accent.
Very thick
When
German
they did
accent.
a cut of this movie and the Universal execs saw it,
Yeah.
they were just like, we don't like that Gump sounds like a Nazi. That's what
Yeah.
Ridley Scott said,
Yeah.
is that he sounds like a Nazi.
Yeah.
We want a ADR's voice.
Let's dub this voice
and
over.
Alice Playton
Who is
ended up
Blix.
doing the ADR work for him.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, like we said, Blix's voice is very modulated to make her sound like this, little goblin. And for Gump, she's just doing more. I don't think they sweeten it up at all. I think it's just a little bit more of her actual natural speaking voice. And she's putting on a little bit of an accent, but it's mostly just an English accent. And it's very interesting and kind of haunting when you see.
We have a clip of it. We have a clip when you first see Gump and Jack is telling Gump about Lily meeting the unicorn and touching it.
It's very interesting when you see this boy and then you hear this vocalization coming out of him.
I took Lily to see the unicorn.
You did what? Silence!
Oh, God, Gump. She touched him.
Touched it! A mortal laid hands on a unicorn! Yes!
Do you think you can upset the order of the universe and not pay the price?
We meant no wrong. Did it for Lily. Did it for love.
He kind of looks like Malcolm in the Middle.
A little bit.
But he's another character that is just wearing like a little brief, a little, a little He-Man brief and fairy ears, and that's it, and shoes, and that's it. And I mean, they're running around in snow. It's all fake movie snow. Who knows what it's made of? So it's probably not that cold in there. It's probably actually pretty warm in that studio. But I mean, he's got no shirt on the whole time. Jack's got no pants on. These characters are running around half naked the entire movie. But I mean, just they're creatures of the woods. They don't need clothes.
Yeah. I mean, me as a kid watching Tom Cruise run around, I mean, he has like a buckskin that they give him that I'm just like, is Jack not like freezing his nuts off?
Well, he
does forest?
He does eventually find armor, which is like a chainmail, tunic. With
what kind of
leather.
armor? What kind of armor is that? You mentioned that the other night.
It's scalloped armor.
Okay,
it's a scalloped.
Do you think
armor.
that
It's not quite chainmail?
Do you think Richard Taylor?
Richard Taylor from
Lord of the Rings,
from Weta Workshop.
Consulted on this movie.
It's me, Richard Taylor from the Weta Workshop, and that is a scalloped armor. It's not a chainmail.
Speaking of Lord of the Rings, Alan Lee, I think, did do visual. I think he was a visual consultant on this movie.
I think at the early stages,
he probably did artwork for it.
Yeah, I think in the early stages. Because what's interesting to me is that the makeups and the character designs in this movie are very big and broad. Characters like Blix, characters like Darkness and Meg Mucklebones, they're almost like
Meg Mucklebones.
Yes, we'll get to her
talk
in a
about
minute.
her.
They're almost like whole masks that go over the face.
I think that I don't even know if they're like gnomes or dwarfs or whatever, like what is the term for them, but Billy Barty, I think he is wearing a version of a mask.
Well, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but you do see Billy Barty's features, though.
A lot of his face. You see more of his face in this than you see in Masters
Billy
of the
Barty,
Universe.
like little person icon.
Well,
of the
I
80s.
mean, the 80s was a big time for little people in
They got a lot of
movies,
work.
And
now it's like
Peter just shrink them down.
Now it's just like Peter Dinklage is just taking up all the roles.
If they even use an actual little person,
because that's what they did in Snow White and the Huntsman. They did facial replacements for him.
Even the hobbits, they and the dwarfs and that, they're just average sized actors that they just kind of shrink down.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, kind of going off that, we had always heard with George Lucas that he wanted to make The Hobbit, couldn't get the rights to it, so he
wrote Willow.
He just wrote Willow. And that's his Hobbit.
Yeah.
And he used little people.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot. He used like so many. And
like Willow has Billy Barty, Tony Cox.
Yeah. And I mean, it's Warwick Davis is like,
Oh yeah,
he's like the hardest working little person in show business. He has an entire
I think he's an agent for little people.
I was going to say he's got an entire
helps them
stable.
find work.
Yeah, he's got a whole company of where he represents, actors. But yeah, the 80s was a great time. I recommend going out, and Scott, you still haven't seen Time Bandits.
I have not seen Time Bandits.
Terry Gilliam.
Is Billy Barty in it?
He's not, because
should be.
It's an all British cast. He should be. It's an all British cast. So we do have Kenny Baker, who's R2D2. I'm sorry.
And also Deep Roy is in this movie.
Deep Roy is in this movie. No. Sorry, it is not Deep Roy. It is Kieran.
Oh, Kieran, sure.
Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Kieran Shaw is. He was Elijah Wood's scale double in The Lord of the Rings.
I love those shots in Lord of the Rings where you can really see the scale doubles. I love all of those.
When you can tell, when you can tell that it's
and it's crazy
the
when they're wearing like a mask.
The full mask.
The full mask is insane.
Why?
And yes, we're that familiar with Lord of the Rings. We watch it that much that we can clock those shots.
Yeah, you can clock in the mask. You can clock the little wig from behind. Kieran Shaw is.
Is he Indian?
He's Southeast Asian.
Okay,
I don't know if he's Indian or if he's from Sri Lanka, or what, but he's Southeast Asian, so he has dark skin, and they completely cover him in this white makeup because he's Elijah Wood.
So he just looks crazy.
So, yes.
Yeah.
So when he's not wearing the Elijah rubber mask and is just Kieran face with the white makeup, you never see that on screen, but you do see it in set photos and behind the scenes footage. And as we know, Lord of the Rings has hours of behind the scenes footage, so there's tons of it.
And became very close with all of the actors.
Oh yeah. They all knows them all, and they all have great stories about Kieran Shaw. And he's in this movie. He's in The Neverending Story.
Yeah,
all these actors
he's
did the
the guy
rounds.
that rides the snail in The Neverending Story.
Yeah. So all these guys they did the rounds in these movies. They had lots of opportunities at the time, but now with CG and all of that being so easy to just replace a person, they are just going with average size actors and movie stars and just plopping them in. When in the 80s, when we needed to have somebody on set, there was an actual crew of smaller stature actors that made names for themselves, and were great actors.
Billy Barty has a really interesting story that when you read his Wikipedia, that he was in
The Bride of Frankenstein.
He's in The Bride of Frankenstein in a cut scene, and we talked about that in our Halloween episode. And
he's like Hollywood, man.
And also, what religion is it that you can't have any medical attention?
Oh, is he like not Scientology, but Christ Scientist or something like that?
Yeah,
I forget what it's called. Yeah. I forget what it is. Is he one of those?
I think so.
Or was he Jehovah's Witness?
Oh, no, he was Jehovah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, we still love Billy Barty. He's great.
Yeah, I mean,
he's amazing in UHF. Weird Al Yankovic.
That little bitty Billy Barty voice, I love.
His voice is so cool.
I still laugh out loud at all of Billy Barty's scenes with who's the other little person?
Oh
it's Cork,
Brown Tom and Cork.
It's Cork Hubert. Yep, I love their little dynamic.
Yeah, very funny together. Yes, yeah. The whole little crew of like the good guys and the led by the Gump, who is, like we said, this Puck kind of like character of the woods. There's also the fairy Una.
Love Una,
who is introduced in this movie as a light on a fishing wire.
That's crazy. That I mean, Ridley Scott and his crew were just dangling a little light with fishing wire.
Yeah,
cost them no money, and now that would just be put all in post.
Yeah, and you can really absolutely tell that it's there. The way Tom Cruise is swatting it away, and the way the light reacts to his face. It's just there's a little light, and it's there, and I think it's really fun that in a movie like that, this fairy is represented by just a little light, and then we get this thing where, much like in Hook later on, she's like, oh yeah, by the way, I can make myself big.
Guess what?
Yeah.
And I love that Gump is just pissed. Like, bitch,
you could do this the whole time.
you could do this the whole time. I mean, I'm sure that they've had other adventures where this would have come in handy. Mm-hmm. And you choose to reveal this now.
Yes. And I absolutely love this actress that plays Una the Fairy. She just has this super ethereal very British
Her name
face.
is Annabelle Lanyon.
Very British face, but very ethereal. These big eyes, and they style her so cool. Just
Her
like
contacts, those blue contacts with the black.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like the unicorn Beanie Baby.
And she has those like iridescent fairy wings.
She's also running around pretty much
in a bikini. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When she is in full size and you see her, she's just in like a bathing suit with little strips of gauze, just like flouncing around.
And this
wings.
is the type of fairy that, it's this very like turn of the century fairy of like the story of those British girls that did the cutouts of the fairies, like they found them in the woods.
The Coddington,
she looks like that.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. I think she looks kind of like a Brian Froud.
Mm-hmm. I think that Ridley Scott tried to get Brian to work on this movie, and he didn't get him.
I was going to say
probably because he was working on Labyrinth.
Yeah, he was hard at work with Henson. I mean, Jim Henson scooped him up in the early 80s. I was going to say I feel like Brian Froud has a very specific point of view with his character design, and it's a little bit more not elegant. Not that these characters are inelegant, but I feel like the creatures in this movie are a little their makeup appliances are a little heavier on their faces. But the Brian Froud creatures that we've seen are usually just puppets, so I don't know how that would translate to. And
also Una's face, they just put kind of beauty makeup on her and a lot of glitter.
A lot of glitter.
We need to mention that.
And that iridescent fabric. Yeah, I love that just her little wings are just that like iridescent.
Yeah, it's a really successful
image. What are the little fairies that are on the zip cord that flies into the fireplace?
Yeah, it's a sky dancer.
Very that. Sky dancer. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah,
giving me a little Valentina on All Stars when she's like twirling around.
Oh man, the spinning Valentina sky dancer.
How has nobody done like a legend runway?
But what do you do? Do you do Lily?
You are obviously going to do Dark Lady, Princess Lady. Okay,
Dark Lady
so
Lily.
we have to talk about that scene. This was my favorite scene of the entire movie. From the beginning of that scene when she's running through, she's since been brought to Darkness's palace, and I'm just kind of noticing in this watch, it's a tree.
Yes, it's a tree.
It's a tree.
Yeah,
I love that.
I was looking at that too. I always thought it was a mountain, but it's a tree. Yeah.
So she's running through the Darkness Palace.
In slow motion.
Just in slow motion, looking like stunning.
Yeah.
Very like 80s music video.
Yes. But at this point, she's wearing like a tattered version
her gown
of the Lily
Her
gown.
gown is in like shreds.
And her hair is just down, parted down the middle, just kind of flowing behind her. At the beginning, she had that like... very like medieval kind of like a hairnetty kind of a thing. I think they called him like a cloche, like in the 40s or something. Not a cloche, but the kind of like hairnet situation, holding these huge like Deanna Troy curls, together. But now she's just like running, and the curls are flying, and the hair and the dress is tatted.
She's run for your life, but make it fashion.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
As one Miss Tyra Banks would say.
But,
and then she ends up in Darkness's dining room with this fucking fireplace that is incredible. I mean, all of the art direction and set pieces and props in this dining room set are incredible.
Yes.
That they put so much work into the scene of how they dressed it.
Yeah.
That they had to have almost all of this custom made for
You
the
see
scene.
something different every time you watch. There's so much shit.
We were just noticing last night there is
table.
Jell-O molds on the table.
But they're like black and red.
That Ridley Scott insisted, I want Jell-O molds.
Yeah. And they're like 3 feet tall and black. They made black Jell-O. Mm-hmm. Probably not edible at all.
And then when she gets into this room and sort of she sees all of this sparkly shit, this is when the temptation is coming over.
Yes.
That she's starting to get, like, intrigued by everything that darkness has to offer. He's seeing all of the jewels. She's seeing all of, like, she opens up, like, the jewelry box and it makes that cool noise. And she takes out that, like, necklace.
Yeah. And then she sees the Dark Lady. Dark Lady. Mm-hmm.
Giving very, I mean, I feel like this is the look that Kim Kardashian should have done for Met Ball. Like, it would be a lot cooler if it was a little more.
Okay.
Like,
we're doing a side by side.
We got to do a side by side of
Lily.
the beautiful Dark Lady with the black face and Kim Kardashian. I mean, and I don't mind the Kim Kardashian Met Ball look. I think it's I think it's successful.
Dementor chic.
I think that it would have been cooler if they would have maybe
And need a little sparkle. Throw some glitter on it, honey.
It needed those beautiful, like, shoulders.
Well, the collar.
The collar
is insane.
So she does this beautiful dance with this Dark Lady. Yeah. And I love the piece of Tangerine Dream score. I think it is so beautiful. It is on my Halloween playlist.
Yeah.
I love to listen to it. Jerry Goldsmith's score piece of this, it's good. It's more of a traditional waltz.
Yeah.
But I prefer the Tangerine Dream cut of it.
It's more like music boxy.
Yeah.
But like dark, twisted kind of music boxing. Yeah.
And then you see that cut of her turn into...
Well, the Dark Lady Disco Dementor just kind of like envelops her, like kind of hugs her.
Yeah.
And then she's wearing the dress.
And then it cuts away and it's her.
Yes. And it is a fashion.
Yeah.
Fashion.
I mean, this is like some Paris... is like some Paris runway shit. I love the hair. I think it's so clever that they put Mia Sara in a bald cap, but they painted it black, and she almost has like spaghetti strings coming out of her head.
There's black tendrils,
and almost like a veil.
Yeah,
and her hair are these little tendrils that are coming out of her head.
Well, she again has like this kind of medieval hairnet thing on the top, and then she has like the Eddie Munster Widow's Peak painted on, very Klaus Nomi.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a very Klaus Nomi painted on Widow's Peak down her forehead. And then, I mean, we've got some Sasha Velour.
The unibrow.
Full on painted in unibrow.
I mean, I guess we can't cite this movie as making the unibrow fashion because Frida Kahlo had been she had existed, so that was around.
She was alive.
But I mean, I feel like was this one of the first times where the unibrow was really embraced by?
I mean,
like fashion, movie costuming.
And here's the thing, Ridley Scott takes risks with fashion,
and definitely in something
movies.
Like Blade Runner.
Yes,
that he insisted on Sean Young as Rachel, that we're going to dress her up like a movie star from the 40s.
We're dressing her up like Mildred Pierce.
We're going to dress her up like Joan Crawford.
And this movie is set in 2019.
And then all of a sudden, on the fashion runways.
Yeah.
Designers start replicating.
We get a little waist and big shoulder pads.
Yep.
And here, not that the unibrow became fashion in the 80s, but this is definitely a very avant-garde look. It is absolutely avant-garde. This collar goes above the back of her head. It's completely angular. She's got the crazy spaghetti tendrils. She's got the painted on Klaus Nomi cap. The bodice of this dress is cut down to her belly button, and Mia Sara is so thin, and there's no cleavage at all. And did you notice? I never noticed it before. I thought it was just titties out, but there is a nude delusion line because it's so low cut.
Interesting. I can see it now.
You can see it now. It's so low cut, it just looks like it's open, but there's actually a nude illusion making a little collar right where her cleavage would be, and so it looks open, but it's just it's
probably holds in
it's holding everything, but
better.
She's dancing and she's running around and all that stuff.
Yeah, she looks incredible.
I never noticed it before.
And that's one of those things that you can really see that on an HD TV now.
Yeah, and so it's just a little piece of transparent fabric, probably is it crepe de chine? I don't know. Is it tool? Maybe. But it's almost invisible. And this look is out of control. It's amazing. It's just, I mean, come on.
I mean, do you think like Morgan McMichaels just has this hanging in her
I
closet?
think Morgan does. Yeah,
Morgan
I think
probably
Morgan
has
would.
it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think this is something that you can replicate and not do 100%
You could do
movie
inspirations
perfect,
of it.
but you can do versions of it. And
I love
be
Mia
inspired by it.
Sara's
It's great.
exchange with darkness.
When she is trying to goop him and say like, I want to kill the unicorn, or which part?
I think it's the exchange right before.
Ah, okay.
That you've stolen my dreams.
Some simple conversation.
I have nothing to talk about. You've stolen my dreams away.
All things change, lady. The dreams of youth are the regrets of maturity. Dreams are my speciality. Through dreams, I influence mankind. My dream is of eternity with you.
Ooh, I love it.
I mean, it's giving me very like elder gay, talking to someone young
Yeah. Oh my god, I love
about
it.
broken dreams.
Yeah. Oh man, listen up, everybody.
I'm what dreams are made of, honey.
I am what dreams I'm made of. Okay, so yeah, there's fashion. There's.
I mean, if I am Princess Lily, I mean, I gotta weigh my options out here. I can have like this, like roll in the hay with Jack,
yeah.
Tom Cruise, or I could live like a queen with darkness. Because I mean, you know that he knows how to treat a lady right.
This is true. This is true. But I mean, 22-year-old Tom Cruise, those thighs. There's a lot of thighs going on in this movie.
You get Tim Curry in that chest.
Yeah. The lifting weights, he could bench press you.
You get fashion, beautiful real estate,
Jello molds.
great place to live.
Well, we don't know what her palace looks like. We never get to see where she's from. But I mean, these medieval castles are probably a
Cold.
dump. Probably not much better than what darkness is
You get a
giving
nice
you.
warm fire.
Sure, love it. So we talked a lot about the makeup and the creatures, but we left out probably our favorite
Oh,
creature.
she is the moment.
She is the moment.
She is the
She's
moment.
An icon. She's a legend. She's Meg Mucklebones.
Who needs this tender morsel? Disturbing Meg Mucklebones' rest.
Jack. They call me Jack, ma'am.
What a fine, fat boy you are, Jack.
You don't really mean to eat me, do you, ma'am?
Oh, indeed I do.
Gone too soon. I wish she was in more of that scene. So
R.I.P. Meg
the
Mucklebones.
scene, the director's cut and the international cut, she is there. It's a little longer. I believe that Jack drops his sword in the water and he has to fish out.
Yeah.
So he doesn't immediately kill her.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Meg Mucklebones played by Robert Picardo.
so I think Robert Picardo is. I think that he's worked with this makeup artist a lot, and he's he would do his guinea pig work a lot.
Sure.
That whenever they wanted to try out something,
Robert
they would
Picardo,
do it on Robert.
The Doctor on Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, you see him a lot.
He
in movies.
is. I mean, he's
In
a
TV.
sci-fi mainstay. He's in Total Recall. So I'm thinking that this makeup designer worked in Total Recall,
Probably.
because he is the Johnny Cab character in Total Recall, and in that movie, it's his likeness. They made this Johnny Cab like robot to look like Robert Picardo, and
And
it's,
also,
it's so interesting that this creature is this kind of like bog witch hag that just lives under the water, and she's there to like eat anybody that like ventures into her bog, and it's a woman, it's a female character, and Robert Picardo, I mean, hey, it works.
Yeah, it's great.
This makeup is absolutely
And
wild.
also, I mean, it's built on like hydraulics that it's going in and out of the water.
Oh, you know what else?
How
I
did
bet
they
this guy
not
did?
drown him as
Yeah.
they were making this scene?
Yeah. You know what else Robert Picardo, and I bet he did with this guy's Explorers.
Oh, sure.
It looks like the Explorer's alien, you know?
Okay.
And Robert Picardo in Explorers, God bless him, he wore this full body, you know, prosthetic suit as that alien in Explorers. And I definitely, I'm almost 100% sure it's the same guy, because knowing Explorers the way I do, it just feels, and I think Explorers was 85 as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Meg Mucklebones. It's funny. It's scary. She's just this green color, and I love that she. Okay,
yeah, he did Explorers, and Explorers is also 85.
Yeah, is it the makeup artist?
Yep.
Wow.
Rob did Explorers. I mean, Witches of Eastwick, Inner Space, RoboCop, Total Recall.
Picardo's in Inner Space. Picardo's in Total Recall.
Basic Instinct.
Yeah.
7.
Wow.
Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise has some crazy makeup. Fight Club 2, so we did he did all of the fight makeup in that movie. Charlie's Angels, so we worked again with Tim Curry.
Don't you mean Crazy Bitch?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what a career.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible.
Absolutely.
And also, I mean, just one of those people in movies that, I mean, the last 15 years, I mean, what are makeup artists doing like that now?
Yeah.
That it's a profession that there's so much art behind it, but now with digital effects, that's all just done in post now.
I mean, I think now they're just like, hey, Ryan Murphy, what real life person are you going to make old Sarah Paulson look like this week? Because I think that's where you get it now, is in movies where it's based on real people.
I forget the
That's
guy.
when you see a lot of makeup.
I forget the guy that did Bombshell.
Yes, that guy was amazing.
That guy's incredible. We just saw
his name. We just saw him at the Academy Museum.
We just saw Charlize's. Do they call them appliances in the biz?
Yeah.
We just saw the appliances at the Academy Museum.
And nowadays they're making those appliances out of silicone as opposed to foam rubber, and the silicone lasts forever.
So you can put those out on display.
so you can put that on display.
Hold on, I'm looking up
I love that Meg
Cashew Hero.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I love that Meg Mucklebones. She tells Jack that he looks fat.
Yeah, she's she's looking at those legs. She's looking at those she's looking at those meaty legs.
Yeah, she's like,
she knows he's been doing his leg workout.
Yeah.
He's not skipping leg day.
No, not at all.
I think it's funny that I guess there was a debate with the armor that Ridley Scott thought that he wanted Tom Cruise nothing to be on his arms, to kind of have these Arnold arms like Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
And the concept art guy was just like, I just don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, no, we need to have
sleeves on him, but I mean, they left him pantsless. So, I mean, I guess that Jack, when he was looking at the armor, didn't quite get the bottoms.
Yeah. He's got the scalloped armor, and he can
run a little better without them.
The suede or leather, arm pieces. But yeah, those legs are bare. We got to see those. We got to see those thighs out for the rest of this movie. The imagery of this movie is very. It's classic. It's classic. Fairy tale legend.
I was seeing kind of visual reference that Ridley Scott had were a lot of the classic Disney animated movies, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Fantasia, Pinocchio. I know that Bambi was a big visual reference for the forest scenes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, Jack, you can get a little Peter Pan in there,
Yeah.
With the coloring and everything. Yeah, lots, but it's classic fairy tale,
Yeah, and that's my thing is that, I mean, I just sort of suspend my disbelief with a movie like that I really don't have the story questions.
Yeah.
That I feel like if you're going into this movie cold, that you would have a lot of issues with the story. The pacing, this movie does feel like it is cut up a little bit, that there was probably there definitely was a better version of this movie that they whittled down to the US cut. But I think that it's still very successful for me. I always think of how did this get made? their
Yeah.
5-star reviews.
Yeah.
I would be like a 5-star review of this movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, why not? 5-star review.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely.
I
worth
mean,
it.
just look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some legendary
honey,
comparisons of this movie
to Legend of Zelda.
Yeah,
Which I didn't play a lot of Nintendo games as a kid, so I don't really have a lot of references like that. I remember it took me very late in my childhood to realize that Zelda is not the little character that you see on the video game. That is Link.
That is
His name is
absolutely-
not Zelda. Zelda is the princess.
Yes, that is absolutely.
Did you play any of Zelda as a kid?
Yes, indeed, I did play.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of the legend references in Zelda? Were the video games creators, I'm assuming that they were from Japan.
Yes.
Were they inspired by legend?
Okay, so the story is this. The Legend of Zelda, the video game, is released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in the United States in 1986. I believe it was released on the Famicom, which is the Japanese version of the Nintendo Entertainment System.
All right.
The same year. I don't think it was released in 85. I believe it was released in 86 as well. The Famicom is essentially the NES, but they got their games a little bit early because Nintendo is based in Japan. The Legend of Zelda follows the title character. Zelda is the princess.
Yes.
Right.
They're kind of solution to Princess Peach. We should say.
And she lives in Hyrule, and there's this evil character, Ganon or Ganondorf, and he whisks away Zelda, and in some versions he kind of places Hyrule into like this eternal winter, and there's this character Link, who is the main character, and you play as Link.
I always like playing as Link when I play Mario Kart.
Yes, you do.
You can play as Link. I play with Link a lot.
You play Link Mario Kart.
I think he's cute.
Yes, and I kind of like playing as Link in Smash Brothers, but I prefer Pikachu if I'm playing Smash Brothers. But Link is a great character.
I always get Legend of Zelda confused with Final Fantasy, and that's a whole nother discussion.
Different. Yes, absolutely. And so the Legend of Zelda was created by Shigeru Miyamoto. And Miyamoto created Mario.
Yeah.
He created Star Fox, Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I mean, just like classic Nintendo games from our childhood.
Nintendo games. It is Miyamoto. He's the one. He's like the Walt Disney of like Nintendo, right? And he kind of is credited as creating the Legend of Zelda series. So the thing is, nowadays video game production, it's like a movie. It could take a year, 2 years, 3 years to create a video
what was
game.
that? What was that video game with Keanu Reeves that took like years for it to come out,
And then it was still bombed.
and then it bombed?
Cyberpunk or something like that. Yeah. But at the time, NES games didn't take quite as long. But the timing didn't quite work out for him to have seen Legend and then say, I'm going to make Zelda.
So both probably being developed at the same time.
And he has gone on to say, which this is the wildest statement ever, but I believe it's 100% true, that The Legend of Zelda was inspired by his youth in Japan exploring the forests and caves of the islands.
I mean, Japan's a very beautiful place.
That is absolutely wild. That is some Spirited Away.
I mean, there's just wild mythology in Japan, so I get it.
I love that. When I read that, I was like, oh my God, my childhood was garbage.
I love that.
I was not exploring caves and forests.
I grew up like living in the.
For crying out loud.
Grew up a out of town kid.
I was exploring Eva's liquor.
I did my fair share of exploring forests, but probably not anything like that.
Oh my God. My like scrapbook of like an adventure today was like walking down to the fucking like King's Market. So he was inspired by, his magical, upbringing in Japan. So
That's incredible.
So that's incredible. But not quite the Legend matchup, right? But The Legend of Zelda does have many, many, many sequels and iterations over the different platforms of Nintendo.
So maybe like the game developers saw Legend and then were inspired.
Well, by the time we get to The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time, which was released for the Nintendo 64, this game was heavily influenced by Legend.
Is there like a Tim Curry character in it?
Well,
that sort of looks like Darkness?
The Ganondorf character in this movie, his iteration, has horns, has hooves, and in this game, Ganondorf does sink Hyrule into winter.
Yeah,
so there
the story of Legend.
Yes, when he takes Zelda. So, and forgive me, hardcore gamers with the GAY, if I'm not getting the Ocarina of Time, storyline correct, but the basic skeletal structure is that, and it is on record that Miyamoto has said that
it was a big inspiration.
Yes, that he does love the movie Legend, and he did incorporate those elements into later works.
I mean, it's very on brand.
Specifically, Ocarina of Time, yes. And so it wasn't exactly this movie that inspired the game in itself, but in later on versions. Ocarina of Time was released. It was for Nintendo 64, so it was released in 1998. So so there's a little bit of truth to that. And when you do see the character of Link, but the traditional Link from the first
blonde,
Legend of
right?
Zelda, he is blonde. He is canonically blonde, yes. And he does have the little
hat,
the little Peter Pan hat. Yeah. So he was a little bit more influenced by the Disney Peter Pan character, but those themes are still there. Those threads are there. But I mean, Legend. This movie is definitely it is a fairy tale, obviously, and it just does have these influences from all over just Western culture.
I want to track down the references that I think Ridley Scott was inspired by I think it's Russian or German fairy tales that I think these were movies probably from like the 60s.
Yeah.
That they would do. I need to track them down.
There's some interesting little references in there, and they said the titles of the movies, but there is nothing that I was familiar with.
We need to go back and get them.
Yeah,
I love all that shit.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the Cocteau Beauty and the Beast, too.
Yes.
I think that was a big inspiration for the visual look of this movie, just because...
Any slow motion shot of Mia Sara
I mean, that movie is so iconic, and it's so loved by filmmakers that a movie like that you have to reference in a movie like Legend.
And I did read that Ridley Scott didn't want to be tied down to an existing story.
Yes.
He didn't want to just do Beauty and the Beast.
He didn't want to do like a Snow White.
Yeah, he wanted
to create his own.
Yeah, to create something new and not have, constraints that maybe multi-hundred-year-old fairy tale might not work so well in a visual medium, because he was like, I want to make a movie. Yeah, and if I make a fairy tale that's already there, then I might be tied down to things that might not fit well. So
I want to create my own.
Let's do a movie from the ground up. And this is what we get.
That.
And this is a very 80s version of that, And
I mean, it's beautiful. In my opinion, it's the crown jewel of 80s fantasy movies. It's so good.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It's definitely elevated, and there are movies like Krull and Dragon Slayer, which are a little bit more serious or more adult. But those, even like Dragon Slayer, has stuff that it's like, I don't want to show kids Dragon Slayer. There's some weird shit going on in that.
The dragon stuff is kind of scary too. When he goes and finds the little baby dragons.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes they skew a little too adult. The Conan movies are like, oh, hey, all right, slow down there. But I think this one is It's elevated. It's good for adults. You can watch it and you don't feel like you're just watching a kid's movie. But I also feel like kids can watch it and not be bored and not be just scarred from.
Yeah, I mean, also I mentioned at the top of the show, this is one of those movies that I kind of have blinders with. It's been a part of my life for that long that I take its bag of crazy for granted. That this movie doesn't work for a lot of people.
Sure,
that I talk to.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Like movies, it's okay that movies aren't for everyone.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, but it's for us, and we hope it's for you. And would you recommend people to watch the theatrical or the director's cut?
I would start with the theatrical, and it's something that you are intrigued in. Then do a little like digging and find the other cuts of the movie and kind of go down the crazy story of the making of this movie because it's really fascinating.
I agree as well. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any final thoughts on Legend before we wrap it up? I think it's time to.
I mean, this movie. This movie just has it all.
Yeah,
it has Tim Curry.
I mean, it's Ridley Scott. You know, if you're afraid of, you know, I don't know, Gladiator.
I mean, kind of Ridley Scott movies. The reviews for House of Gucci just came out this week, and they are very hot and cold to people. Yes, it kind of reminds me of how a movie like this was received.
Sure.
That people were either into it or they were not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
and also, we have yet to discuss the Brian Ferry song.
Oh yeah,
the Brian Ferry song, and also I love the Loved by the Sun that Tangerine Dream did with the lead singer of Yes. I just found out that it's the lead singer of Yes.
Oh, okay.
But this is Brian Ferry, and this is also sort of built into the score at times for the Tangerine Dream cut.
That's true. Which I love. I appreciate.
I mean, we were just talking about songs from 80s movies, and how movies really aren't made like that anymore. That you really don't get great pop ballads for movies anymore.
Yeah.
This music video is incredible. It's Brian Ferry in this crazy puffy jacket, and he's singing to this wall that's projecting the movie. And he's so cool. Walking down these stairs. It is the most 80s music video to a movie ever.
I love early 80s music videos because they're very much like they weren't really... We're still experimenting.
Yeah, like we booked the sound stage for the weekend, and we're going to have Brian Ferry sing on the staircase as we're projecting the movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I second everything you say. I feel like I would recommend... if you're going to rent this movie, or you know, if you can find certain versions, I would say start with the theatrical cut. It's tight, it's quicker, it goes down easy, and I mean, I don't know if you have weird thoughts about Tom Cruise, we're right there with you. I am very hesitant about seeing new Tom Cruise movies just because that's a lot.
But
there's a lot. But
I give Tom Cruise a lot of shit, but there is something about Tom Cruise that does just sort of crackle on screen.
Yeah.
That there is a quality about him.
That
is a movie star.
Yeah, there's a reason he's like the biggest movie star.
It's kind of a bummer now that he just makes these huge high profile sequels, and he just doesn't really do the crazy Interview with the Vampire or Magnolia character pieces anymore.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we definitely recommend
Tom Cruise running around in his armor and no pants, those legs.
Yeah. Hair.
The sexy darkness.
Yeah.
I mean, is darkness a gay icon? I think so.
Yes, for sure. So go out and find this movie and enjoy. We sure do.
I love
watch it.
We watch it a lot.
Yeah. So
I have 3 copies of this movie now.
Yeah. We have a DVD.
I have the DVD,
a Blu-ray.
The Blu-ray, because I wasn't happy with how the transfer looked on our TV at the time. So I got the Blu-ray, and we just got the Arrow edition of it.
This Arrow video.
Oh, they pulled out the stops with this Arrow edition.
Yeah,
the Annie Leibovitz lobby cards that she did, all the publicity stills for this movie, kind of anything that looks studio shot. I think those are all Annie Leibovitz photos.
Yeah. So if you can find that, track it down. It's probably not available online. We had to go to an actual brick and mortar video store to find it, but we found it. So, but we definitely recommend it.
Or you could just go to arrow.com.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, thank you so much for listening, everybody.
I'm fine. I'm glad that we finally got to this movie. And this is a movie that followers of the podcast and I have talked about Legend. It was mentioned in a listener review.
Oh yeah,
of Legend,
it was. Yeah,
that I kind of perked up, and it made me think about this movie again. That we needed to get to it.
Yeah.
So whoever you are that wrote that video, that wrote that review, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'm glad that we got to it.
Yes. And thanks for listening again. This was a really fun episode, but I think we've got some other business to get to now that we are at that point in the episode. We have some. Let's see. We've got some Patreon shout outs. Yes, indeed. Yay! We've got a new patron. Yay! Alberto. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much
for being a friend and for joining our Patreon. We've got lots of really fun stuff on there, but before we get to that, let's just say hello to everybody.
Hello.
Travis, Alberto first and foremost. Travis, Esperanza, Nicole, Susan, Barry, JJ, Layton, Shelby, Merle, Michael, Charlie, Heather, Paul, Jamie, Drew, Jimmy, Genevieve, Dawn, Josh, Emily, Millie, Aaron, Melinda, Jim, Jessica, Nick, and Shannon, Christine, and Rufino. Thank you so much, everybody. Head over to patreon.com/movies that made us gay. And
we get newsletters that come out every month. Our Watch With Us commentary. We did 3 last month. We need to do our commentary for this month still.
Indeed. There'll be a new one coming up for November, but you did get 3 for October. So how about that? And we're working on some other fun stuff, so keep checking back and head over to patreon.com/movies that made us gay.
And I think we got a new user review. Did you want to read it, Pete?
We did. We got a new user review over on Apple Podcasts. This is from Apple Podcast user Library B. TGIF! ! Scott and Pete make every Friday even better with a new episode of their hilarious and witty podcast. I started with episodes about movies that I loved. I then went down the path of movies I missed, and I wonder how I ever skipped them. Every episode is like a party, and they always have unbelievable insights into the films. I am always amazed when I learn something new about a movie I have watched dozens of times. You can't stop the movies with this 5-star podcast.
Woo.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
That was so much
I love
fun.
that.
Yeah. Head over to Apple Podcasts and write us a review. We'll read it on an episode just like this one. And smash those 5 stars. Subscribe, like, do all that crazy stuff.
Follow us on the Instagram and Twitter. Twitter at MTMUG Pod, on Instagram and Facebook at Movies That Made Us Gay.
Yes, indeed. Give us a follow, and we got a lot of stuff going on social media. Yeah, we're very active over there.
I can't believe that we're approaching to the later half of the year. Like, I'm finishing up the schedule, and we're almost done with 2021.
Yeah. Just
what the hell?
I can't believe it.
Crazy.
Yeah. So go ahead and follow us all over there, and hey, maybe we'll follow you back. We'll give you a shout out. But you can follow us individually. My name is Pete. I am at Peter Lasagna on Instagram and Twitter.
I'm Oscar Scott on Twitter and Scott Youngballer on Instagram.
Yes, indeed. So go check us out. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.